Composer's Cut. Hello and welcome to Composer's Cut, where we take a peek inside the minds of the creators of today's most cutting-edge music. Tonight's guest is guitarist and composer Michael Harris, who will be listening to and discussing his new album, Orchestrate 2, Rage and Restraint.
Hello, music fans. This is Michael Harris, and I'd like to thank you in advance for checking out Composer's Cut. For the next 60 minutes or so, I'm going to be revisiting and discussing the music on my new record, Orchestrate 2, Rage and Restraint. A word of warning, this is not going to be the best way to listen to the record for the first time, as I'm going to be talking over all the music. Yes, I'm a guitar player, but I'm not sure you can classify this as a guitar record. That's not the way I approached it. I tried to view the big picture and, as the title implies, the full orchestration of a piece, so a lot of times the guitar comes last. Compositionally, I aim for a more pure rock metal classical style rather than mixing in other genres. And it was an absolute dream come true to work with all these classical musicians on this record, along with my drumming brother, Mr. Brian Harris, which is always a pleasure. The first sounds you will hear are those of a string quartet featuring Russian violinist Maria Grigorieva, UK violinist William Stewart, cellist Brandon Chung, and myself on classical guitar as the fourth string of the quartet. We'll be playing the orchestra pit theme, which we'll again be playing moments after at full volume. Here we go. What you just heard was a reference to the theme of Octagon, the song that follows this. This is the orchestra pit theme, which again you heard with string quartet at the beginning. I like a lot of recurring themes in my music. And we have several melodies going on at the same time there. Brian Harris, my brother, on drums. And another little reference to Octagon there. Now right there we go into Octagon. Now I'm playing nylon string in unison with violin. Now again we're bringing in the Octagon theme just a little bit at a time. Now here we go with the full theme. If we're going to continue that theme, it has to build up in some way, so we're obviously giving it a regular drum beat here. More intensity coming up. So that was the Rage, now Restraint. Going into a new section. my nylon string again in unison with violin. To me, this part sounds like it belongs in this song. Now this part, that was myself and William Stewart, a different violinist, in unison. It's a tricky little line with some grace notes in the middle. Now I'm in unison with flute. So that gives this part something new and fresh from the previous. Now we've got a unison line that's electric, acoustic, strings, and flute right there in unison. Now we go from thrashing out with rage to a completely new, soft interlude. So there I was playing in unison with French horn, which I love using. New unison lick. That did not have any drums on the demo, and I just told my bro to play in unison with me, and he nailed it. Back to the theme. A busier drum beat. Another thing I wanted to go for on this record is more natural drum sounds, especially snare drums that aren't over-processed or sound replaced. Now we have a guitar solo and ending with more rage. Love that drum fill. Okay, and so that was Chant of the Octagon, now going into Timepiece. It's one of the last things I wrote for the record. I'd actually given up on this piece earlier, but came back later and restructured it. The ending of that flows very well into the beginning of Circus of Lydia by sheer coincidence. And I love using brass for powerful low notes. I call this my twisted circus riff, hence the circus in the song title. I see a picture in my mind of a little monkey playing a cymbal, almost mechanically, in a deranged way. And keep building that up. Then it explodes into this bridge. So I'm setting up the main theme of the song. Right there it went to D Dorian, and up to one of its relative scales, F Lydian. Now a high string enters. I'm just having some fun in the rhythm section. Drums, bass, guitar, and strings playing in unison. It took quite a while to compose that little section. I wanted to make it interesting and not monotonous, kind of a composition unto itself. comes the theme I described earlier. Myself on classical guitar and William Stewart playing violin along with me in unison. D Dorian back to F Lydian there. And that's where the Lydia in the title comes from. Okay, I'm going to repeat the theme because playing it once wouldn't really get the point across. But I want to give it more strength each time I play through it. So we've got a little bit of choir, more strings this time around. Now we're going to play the theme a third time, and the strings playing in harmony are giving it a build-up this time around. There's a flute in there as well. My brother is taking one for the team here and playing some marching snare. Nearing the end of the third time, it's time for something new here, I think so. I have to wait for the right inspiration, knowing what I need for the song. So this is the next step, which features a guitar solo. A little sideways vibrato there. And this is going to build up into the most intense section. So I'm battling myself between electric and classical. On that last note, I was using sideways vibrato to simulate the sound of a tremolo arm. Now we have strings in unison and double kick coming up. And we're still going F down to D, as we have been previously in the song, albeit a little heavier now. But I like all the parts to be purposeful. Back to the Twisted Circus. But of course, a different arrangement of it. Kind of a call and response now into the full riff. And I'm setting up the theme again with these strings that I like the mood that I set with these strings. There's a minor second interval in there somewhere. I love dissonance. Down to D Dorian. Back up to F Lydian. Now I'm playing the theme on electric guitar for the first time. William Stewart still playing in unison. So playing through the theme again with everything having been built up with more dynamics. Great drum fill from my brother. Woohoo! And a guitar solo. Twisted Circus riff, acoustic version, unplugged. My nylon string, William Stewart on viola, and Tiger Woods putting from Off the Green. Now that ended with nylon string. Why not start the next one with nylon string? Logician's Lament. I consider myself a logician, an absolute slave to logic, which is pretty much what pure classical music requires. For an album, I tend to throw out more stuff than I keep. What won me over on this piece was the string arrangement just as much as the guitar. In counterpoint with the guitar, there's a lot of different things going on, especially here. With the cellos doing a completely different line than everything else. Everything working against each other but fitting together somehow. So I had just as much fun arranging the strings as the guitar part. And right there I added an extra diminished chord. It's just back to the verse, really, but this was right here. That extra diminished chord in there was delightfully psychotic in the second verse. A different lick there than the first verse as well. Just trying to build up, put something new in every verse. More marching snare, some bells. And then back to just myself. Now we have a augmented chord. It just felt right, and a little twisted as well. Octavian 3. So I'm following the chords on these arpeggios, following all the chord changes, so there's 3 or 4 different arpeggios there. A minor, E minor, D minor. And here comes the theme. Now harmony with it. Then we move up an octave. Then just when you think we're going to go again, right in the middle of the phrase, we have a key change right there. Another key change. And I'm playing variations on the main theme in those bridges. So that last piece ended on A flat and restarted in A minor. Seems a little strange, but it works. And sometimes the most challenging thing is getting from point C or D back to point A again. The new chord, E dominant 7 right here. Now we have a one-time bridge where I'm using hybrid picking and playing along with Maria in unison. Now I bring in a string section. Another bridge. To me, it just fit perfect, but not after a lot of heartache and trying to find the right part. Here we go. I always think of the Hitchcock shower scene on this part. Very moshy and with string stabs coming up here. If you listen closely, there are 3 notes. So someone is being murdered by a string section here. And the French horn, along with myself, in unison. Here comes the theme again. Still the same theme here, but key change, nylon and violin in unison. Now we're back into the last half of the verse. And that was the first key change and the second key change. That was an A flat dominant 7 arpeggio that I added to that section from the previous time. And then, like the first Octavian from Defense Mechanisms back in '91, I wanted to add an extended guitar solo at the end, which is actually the only real guitar solo in the song. Then that was a Paganini lick, octaves moving chromatically, then some arpeggios of fourths and fifths also ascending chromatically. Then instead of ending the piece, I thought I would continue with something a little tasteful, which at the end of the day is my favorite way to play guitar. Sideways vibrato there. By the way, this is played with my ESP FRX-401 axe through my original Mesa Dual rectifier, which is what I used for most of the record. Now we're on to Lifelong Quest, the title implying the amount of time it took me to come up with a theme like this, the one that starts at 104. It was magic to me, but I've actually played this for people and apparently they feel nothing. Well, I've always said you can have 3 people in a room listening to the same song, and one's laughing, one's crying, and one just wants to get the heck out of there. So I'm setting up the theme here, just bits and pieces of the melody. I wrote this theme back in 2007. The theme for this song, which is just being developed right here. Jim Hurley is playing violin in there. He's done some work with Thought Chamber. It's Jim and myself in unison. Now the theme, bringing the dynamics way down. So we have a string section, but Jim is playing the melody, along with myself on nylon. And by the way, thanks to one fine musician and keyboardist, Bill Jenkins of Thought Chamber, for recommending Jim Hurley on violin and also engineering these sessions with him. Harmony electric guitars. I've also got a clean guitar in the background that's panning all around. Now, dynamics up a little bit. first verse. I used nylon on this melody, now obviously distorted electric. Bringing in the choir. Lots of slow arpeggios here from my slow fingers. Back to the theme again. With volume swells, a great way to bring the dynamics down. And it ends like it started. That's a steel string acoustic. Next is Wrath of the Conductor. The main theme of this is in the scale of Hungarian minor. Coming up right here. And it was my bro's idea to make this a double kick here. So we have coming up a kind of a call and response with Maria right there, then myself. Second verse, I added more harmonies to it to make it different than the first verse. Now about this time you're feeling like we need something new in the song, so we're going to go to a bridge here, which Brian and I refer to as the polka section. And it features some staccato stabs right here. And Brian is working in some of his hi-hat stabs in between the staccato stabs. His hi-hat is talking to the strings. I've also got a constant B note played by the choir and strings over the B to C chord change. So it makes the C a C major 7. And I love major 7s. Now back into the theme. That felt really natural, but now what? It feels like it needs yet something different. So we go to a completely new part here with a new melody. We're still setting it up here. The strings are going to play the melody first, then I'll join in. The way I think about composing and arranging is it's not all about the guitar all the time. I try to envision the full orchestration and big picture. The strings continue to play the melody, and now I'm soloing. Now back to the theme. We've got yet another verse of the theme, so what we're going to do is put a drum fill in here to give it something new. Love that fill. Back to the polka section. Dynamics down. So I pretty much kept the solos that I had on the demo. So my brother followed me on some of this stuff. Right there. This part we played once earlier, but now I've doubled the length of it for the ending. And another dastardly drum fill coming up from my brother. Now Interlude Noel, which is actually in a major key, E major, but I stuck this minor key bridge in as an intro. Now the theme. So the first part of this chord progression of the theme of the song is a fairly standard 1-5-6 minor 4. But it was the second half right there that won me over on this as being a keeper. C sharp minor, A, B, tonic, to the B again, C diminished, C sharp minor, G sharp minor, C sharp minor. Hadn't heard that exact progression before, and that's what made it a keeper to me, along with the melodies, of course. I put the French horn in there. I just love French horn. It sounds so majestic. And by the way, this bridge is the same bridge I made an acoustic version of for the intro to this piece. Back to the theme now. In the second verse, to give it something new, I've got rhythm section accents and counter melodies. In the choir, I'm up an octave, added a lot of momentum to that, and it just drops off. Jim Hurley and myself playing the same melody, an octave or two apart. Now it goes into the melody again on nylon. Spiced it up a bit. I could have just soloed there, but I wanted to keep the melody intact. So we dropped the dynamics down even more, and David Ashton plays some oboe. Right back up. And I might add that right there, the chord progression went from A major to A minor, a major to minor modulation, in other words, with the same root note. So the French horn back in there, kind of echoing the melody. I spent a lot of time getting the dynamics right on this last section. Now we have a tempo decrease and a call and response of the melody. It felt right ending on that A instead of the expected C-sharp minor. Now we go on to Masquerade Nocturne. We started off there with some cellos, just setting the mood. Now it's myself on nylon string and Maria Grigorieva once again on viola, playing mostly unison lines. Check my YouTube, we have a video for this. We're in 6/8. I really like these eighth notes from the backing strings. Regarding the title, I'm a big fan of the movie Amadeus, and there's a scene that I love of a masquerade party that always stuck with me as something to use in an appropriate song title, and nocturne being music that evokes a feeling of nighttime. My first demo of this piece had no drums in it at all. But I'm glad we made the decision to get some Brian Harris in on the party. I like this progression. It sounds suspenseful to me, I guess you could say. Keep adding to it. I'm putting in some slow arpeggios. Then myself and my bro are going to play a unison lick here. Bottoms out and goes back to the theme with a choir this time. Now the eighth note backing strings. I just love the movement they give this piece, especially with no drums here. Now on this melody, that was a harmony instead of the normal unison there. Then I go to a completely different line, right here. And right when you think it's going to be a train wreck, we end in a harmony. And this ending is hybrid picking, so right there you can hear a pick strum. With some of these being two notes separated by strings, you can't do it all with a pick, so I decided pick and fingers would be the best approach. The Empress with No Clothes was one of the latter, possibly the last thing I wrote for the record. The song title being satire on a well-known book title, and the Empress being my white guitar. I'm using hybrid picking there again. And that's both an electric and acoustic in unison. Back to the theme. And that takes us into the orchestrator. I originally wrote this on piano. You can hear a piano playing along with the guitar melody there. So a lot of the original piano got reorchestrated to strings and guitar. I really like this bridge. It sounds majestic, grandiose. A strong bridge that sounds like it's married to the verse. And I'll wait as long as it takes to find that. Now in comes Brian. So we've got yet another bridge there that still has momentum. A little call and response with some pizzicato strings. Really emphasizing the melody here with the marching snare as well. So that was another interlude that I felt fit quite well into the piece, but not without a bit of pain. I had to go through a few rejects to find that one. Now the main guitar solo. A little legato work there with some 4-note per string scales. Little pick harmonics there. This is a bridge that occurred earlier in the piece, but now I've totally replaced the melody with volume swells to give it something different. So I like to make every part offer something new. Now I'm playing piano and harpsichord in unison, overdubbed. And build it up a little bit. Now Maria and myself in unison. Back to the intro. To end with some arpeggio triplets. Mundus Novus means new world, so when this enters, it really sounds like some kind of discovery to me, and the title was appropriate. Vibrato is always very important, but I think in a piece like this, even more important. Now we've got a bridge that once again feels like it belongs in this piece, and it came to me pretty quickly, actually. I'm getting to kind of a turnaround here, but where it goes back to the theme and really extend it and make it build up. When is it going to turn around? Finally. So rather than go through that theme again and bring down the dynamics and do kind of a minimalist version of it. So that wasn't a new part, just a rearranged previous part. Now, more of a full solo. There's a couple of bends in there that are two pitches on the same bend. Now for the grand finale, I thought I would give it some tension here with timpani. I thought I would end the record with one of my favorite melodies on the record, which is Lifelong Quest, hence the title of this, Final Quest. I gave my brother free rein to just go off on this piece. It's intense and the drums are appropriate. Same bridge that was in Lifelong Quest. And there you have it. By the way, I originally had a very mellow ending to the record with myself on nylon string and Jim Hurley on violin. Well, you're going to hear that in just a minute, but for the actual record, I had the last-minute idea of doing what you just heard, which is having my brother crush a bar of metal, and so we wrote it out like that. Well, thank you, friends, for hanging around for the ride. This has been an absolute blast for me to ramble on about my life's work, and even more so, I appreciate you listeners. So thank you, along with my brother Brian and all the fabulous musicians who played on the record, also to Lion Music. Again, this has been Composer's Cut.